Welcome back to another episode of List Mania. I'm Chris Emma with 670 The Score, and alongside my teammate and buddy Tim Kelly, who also writes for the Phillies Nation. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. I love these conversations. We had a great first one, and I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Well, let's get right to it. We're doing the top third baseman in Major League Baseball right now. So start right at the top. Number 10, it's Alec Bohm of the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's get right into it here because you led in the article, and I was waiting for it. Kris Bryant, you talked about his performance since 2015, the inconsistencies, which are certainly part of his career. So when you let in with that, I thought, okay, he's not 10. Is he going to be 9, 8? Is he going to be top 5? Kris Bryant's not on the list. What gives?
It's such a deep position that Kris Bryant ended up being the first one off. And I can understand if you think Kris Bryant should be on here over Alec Bohm, but Alec Bohm is coming off a season where he hit 338, and Kris Bryant's coming off a season where he hit 206 and had an on-base percentage under 300. So to me, Kris Bryant could very well, especially in a contract year, play himself back into this list. But for now, Kris Bryant, Eugenio Suarez, those were the first two guys off the list for me.
I agree that Suarez is another one, but with Bryant, I agree on the inconsistencies. He's been up and down. 2018 with the injuries, he had, I think, 12 home runs. Last season, you mentioned 206. I threw out the 2020 season for a lot of these guys, the same as I would for Alec Bohm with 338. I think Alec Bohm's going to be near a 300 hitter. I think he's going to be one of the premier third basemen in all of baseball. And if we have this conversation a year from now, I think he might be even top 5. But I think Alec Bohm's projection in his career is going to be Kris Bryant. I think he is going to be that type of player. Really, the biggest difference between the two is that Bohm is a guy who's going to use all sides of the field. He's going to spray the ball to right center, down the right field line, not hit for as much power and sacrificing that for hitting, like you said, 338 or probably 300 if you do it over 162. Bryant, the thing with Bryant here, that we've discovered it more in Chicago, is that his head's just not been in the right place in terms of the rumors about trade possibilities and the constant discussions of his future. I don't want to hold that against him, and I would put him up there as high as 7 or 6. I don't agree with him being 11, and I don't agree with Bohm being the first guy in over him.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think if Kris Bryant had gotten traded, he might have forced his way onto this list. To me, he's someone that really needed a change of scenery, and he may get that this season, during the season, or next season. Back in Chicago, I don't think that that's the correct spot for him anymore, and I did struggle to leave him off the list, but right this minute, I don't think Alec Bohm is better than 2016 Kris Bryant, but I think he is better than 2020 and probably even 2021 Kris Bryant.
All right, so let's move on here. Number 9, Josh Donaldson, who since 2015, the top third baseman in all baseball according to wins above replacement, which of course factors in, the defensive parts of the areas, which I really value when we're talking about the third base position, because that's the hot corner. You need a guy as a vacuum there. That's also, by the way, part of why I hold things against Bohm in terms of being the number 10 players. I don't think he's quite that defensive stalwart there. But moving on, number 8, Yoan Moncada, the Chicago White Sox, a player who, we talk about that 2020 season. He was dealing with COVID. He was asymptomatic when he got the virus before the season, but said it affected him. And you could see he struggled to run the bases. He struggled to be that caliber of player that we know he is. He's a guy who's one of the youngest premier players, I think, a rising star in baseball. I mean, the virus really kind of zapped him. So that's another one. When you're talking about potential risers in 21, I think he's going to get back to that 2019 form and be that caliber player. Number 7, Rafael Devers, the Red Sox. Switch hitter, good power, no disagreements there. Now, here's where we get into the interesting part, because I think there's a big divide. And tell me if you agree here, between number 7 and 6 down. Number 6 is Manny Machado of the San Diego Padres. I agree with that. And number 5, Nolan Arenado of the Cardinals. How did you differentiate between those two?
Well, I mean, I think Nolan Arenado is one of the greatest fielders at any position that I've ever seen. So out of respect, I'm putting him there. But there are legitimate questions, and I'm not someone that holds against playing in Coors Field, but there is a reality that away at Coors Field in Nolan Arenado's career, he's hit 322. Away from Coors Field, he's hit 263, and he no longer plays his home games at Coors Field. So the glove is going to travel. I'm interested to see how the bat will. Manny Machado's kind of the flip, though. 2 seasons ago, he really struggled hitting in San Diego at Petco Park the first year. Last year, he exploded, was an MVP finalist. So it's funny because a lot of people saw this list and they were disappointed. They thought I had Arenado too low. So it's interesting to hear that you maybe thought I should have had Machado higher than Arenado potentially.
I was just curious how you would factor in the Coors Field effect. We have the same discussion now when we're discussing right fielders and Charlie Blackmon. And I'm in agreement with you that I think the Coors Field thing should not be held against him. Put him in the NL Central now, a different division. You're not playing mile-high baseball. I think Nolan Arenado is going to prove himself as that Hall of Fame caliber player. So no disagreements there. If anything, I would have Arenado higher than number 4 on the list, Matt Chapman. And I'm a Chapman fan. I think he's criminally underrated, but I can't put him ahead of Nolan Arenado. So I'm curious where you were in that one.
Well, I mean, I talked about Nolan Arenado being one of the best defenders I've ever seen with Scott Rowland and Andrew Jones, those type of guys. But since 2017, Nolan Arenado has 26 less defensive runs saved than Matt Chapman. Now, Matt Chapman is coming off of a hip injury. He played just 37 games last year. But in the 2 prior seasons, he had a 12.9 WAR. So which is the 6th best mark of any player in any position in baseball. To me, he's one of the most complete stars in baseball. And the only reason we don't talk about him like that is because he's in Oakland, which is strange because Oakland has been good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I would have Arenado higher. That's just me. But I agree with you on the defensive metrics. I do agree with you on valuing the two together. I could argue it as a toss-up, but I would go Arenado on this one. But moving on here, the number 3, Jose Ramirez of the Indians. No disagreements here. I think he's one of the best players in baseball, switch hitter. If he's played another position, you could argue him as the number 1 player. I would have him 2. Number 2 on your list is Anthony Rendon of the Angels. And then number 1 on your list is Alex Bregman of the Astros. Now, here's where we got to talk. Because I was curious last season, with the Astros coming off their cheating scandal, their sign stealing, I wanted to see which Astros remained at that peak level and which players dropped off. We saw it with Jose Altuve, fell off a cliff. A guy who was really kind of a sentimental favorite. He lost all that value. He stopped looking at him as the Jose Altuve before the scandal was revealed. Carlos Correa, et cetera, et cetera. Alex Bregman was a curious one. His average dropped to 242. He's been near that 300 level. One of the game's premier power hitters. For a guy who's not built like a power hitter, I drop him. I hold the scandal against him to the point where I put him down to 3 or even 4 if I would even move Arenado even higher than that. I'm willing to look at that thing and say that was leading him to be that caliber. And I know Bregman was a former top pick, top prospect, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm holding that one against him here. Anthony Rendon has been the top third baseman in wins above replacement since 2017, and I don't think he's fallen off at any level.
Between 2018 and 2019, Alex Bregman was the 3rd best offensive player at any position in baseball, according to FanGraphs. So you have that. He did hit just 242 last season, but he still posted a 350 on-base percentage, and like you said, it was only a 60-game season. So the one thing that's really the most telling to me is the Astros were accused of this scandal, which, don't get me wrong, it's the biggest scandal in baseball, one of the biggest scandals of all time. So certainly they cheated. It was wrong. To me, it would hold these guys out of the Hall of Fame if they're in that position eventually. But Alex Bregman, at the same time, the thing I was struck by in certain cases, and he was one of them, is that if you look at their away splits, because they were supposedly only cheating at home, the away splits were even better in some cases. So I almost feel like it's a coincidence with Alex Bregman that he happened to have a down season in the 60-game season the year after that. Because prior to that, this was a superstar everywhere, and it was a superstar that did not need to cheat.
It's a fair point, and I like what you said about the road splits as well. Altuve is a guy I'm not going to look past. I'm not going to give him a second chance. I think he got absolutely exposed with this scandal. Alex Bregman's different. Like I said before, he's a former, prize prospect. I think the accolades back the player that he is. When I'm talking about throwing out the 2020 numbers, maybe it was more the 2020 effect than it was the sign stealing thing being exposed. So I'm with you on that. I still side with Rendon, but I tell you what, man, you make a good point. And if Bregman comes back in 21, hits near 300, goes over 400 on base, and hits 35 to 40 homers, I'm back on board. I can put him back up there at the top. But right now, for me, it's Rendon. I still feel like he's criminally underrated, the same way I would Matt Chapman. A guy who plays now on the West Coast. I know Rendon was a world champion on the East Coast with the Washington Nationals, but I feel like Rendon's never going to get his due respect. I think he deserves to be number one.
Yeah, he didn't get the proper respect really till that last year in DC. So I agree with you. The thing I would say here, and Alex Bregman, who knows because of the scandal, but I look at Anthony Rendon, Jose Ramirez, Matt Chapman, Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, at least that group. And I say these are all guys that when their careers are over could have cases for the Hall of Fame. So this is an especially deep position. The way we talked about shortstop in the late 90s when you had A-Rod, Jeter, Nomar Garciaparra, that's how I look at this position at third base right now. I mean, Jose Ramirez is one of the premier players in the sport. To me, he's better than Francisco Lindor, and you'll probably finally see that now because Cleveland's a little more barren than they've been. But I think you could make a case for legitimately 4 or 5 of these guys. And I mean, even beyond that, Rafael Devers 2 years ago was a superstar offensively. So you have Alec Boehm, who is, I share the questions about you with his fielding, but this is someone offensively that's a star. Josh Donaldson is closer to the end than the beginning, but he's only 2 seasons removed. And then you get back to Kris Bryant. So it's such a deep position. Gio Urshela, there's different guys we didn't even mention because there's legitimately 13 or 14 guys here that are deserving to be on this list.
You got me on a different one now. I'm willing to say your top 6 on this list goes into the Hall of Fame. Starting with Manny Machado, down to Arenado, Matt Chapman, Jose Ramirez, Anthony Rendon, and Alex Bregman. Are you with me on that one? You cap it up? Are you Machado off or?
I think Manny Machado is going to be a lock for the Hall of Fame. I think you look at the rest, like Matt Chapman still needs a few more years. Nolan Arenado, to me, is probably going to be a Hall of Famer regardless, but certainly it would help his case if he doesn't fall off a cliff offensively away from there. Ramirez, Rendon, I don't know what's going to happen with Alex Bregman. To me, I would hold anyone involved with that, at least offensively, out of the Hall of Fame. But statistically, will he have those numbers? I would bet so.
I should add Josh Donaldson in as well. I think he's a future Hall of Famer as well. So more discussions to be had. Tim, thanks for joining me. Stick around for the next episodes of List Mania.